As an artist, I have always been interested in creativity and the process of going from an idea to a final product. I've also always been fascinated with people and how they choose to do things, as well as experimenting with new mediums and trying new techniques. When it came to figuring out an idea for my senior exhibition, I knew that I wanted to combine all of these interests into one insanely large and complicated project. 7 months ago, I started putting together an idea, and at first it started off simple. What if I tried to recreate my childhood art? I have books and binders full of drawings from when I was little. It seemed like a good plan. I liked the idea, but it didn't feel big enough. I wanted my big, final art project to really feel big. What if I tried to get other people involved? What if I recreated the art of other kids? What if I was able to work with an entire grade level of elementary art students? The idea began to grow and grow, but I wanted something more ambitious. I didn't just want to have the final drawings to show for all of the hard work that would inevitably go into this project. I wanted to capture as much of the process as possible. What if I was able to record the whole project, showcasing the kids' creative processes and encapsulating my overall experience and turn it into a documentary? Now it finally felt like the idea had taken shape into something of a greater magnitude. Maybe the idea seemed too ambitious, but now that it was in my head, I had to at least try to execute it. Over the next 6 months, I dealt with so many setbacks. Despite that, however, I had received total approval to move forward with the project. And after an immense amount of planning and preparation, it was finally time to head to the local elementary school and get to work. The next step was to present the plan to the 5th graders. I explained that I was working on a really big project, and that I was looking for some help. Their part of the project was to come up with some sort of a creature. The creature could be weird or funny or scary. The creature could be big or small. The creature could be pink or blue or all of the colors of the rainbow. The only rule was that the creature had to be original. I explained that I wanted the kids to explore their own imaginations and that they would have total creative freedom. They were provided with markers, colored pencils, crayons, watercolors, paints, and other various mediums, and were encouraged to utilize whatever art supplies they felt like using in order to best capture their ideas. Not only would the kids be tasked with coming up with original creatures and drawing their original creatures, but they also had to write a short story explaining a little bit more about their creatures. I told them that this whole project was a competition, and that in the end I would be selecting 4 winners who I felt were able to create the most creative creatures. To entice them even more, I explained that I would be recreating the 4 finalist creatures in order to try and bring their ideas to life, and that their drawings and my recreations of their drawings will be put on display in an art exhibit. As I got to the end of explaining the project to the kids, I could tell that some of the kids were so eager to get started that they might just burst. As soon as I told the kids to get to work, the room exploded with creative energy. While the kids began to pour their ideas out onto paper, I went around and asked them questions about their processes and their creatures. Why did you decide to use the color blue? Where does your creature live? Why did you choose to combine a spider and a cow? How does your pizza monster see when it has pepperonis for eyes? Why is your creature called Mr. Steal Your Muffins when her actual name is Felicia? When I was planning this whole project, I had no idea how the kids would do. I thought that choosing 4 winners might be hard, especially if the kids struggle with trying to be creative. Choosing 4 winners did end up being very difficult, but it was for an entirely different reason. The sheer amount of creativity from the fifth graders was incredible. Being able to witness how they went about creating their creatures and how their ideas were constantly changing and evolving was so much fun. I was amazed with all of their unique and quirky ideas, their never-ending abundance of energy, and their eagerness to talk about and share all of their wacky designs. It turned out that the kids were so impressively creative that narrowing it down to just 4 winners would be much, much harder than I thought it would be. In the end, I decided to choose drawings which I felt not only exemplified the ideas of being creative and thinking outside the box, but that also spoke to me in terms of my style and my interests as an artist. I was then able to sit down and talk with each of the young artists about their ideas, designs, and stories to get a better idea of what it was they were trying to create. The first winner I selected was Ellie. In terms of thinking outside the box, Ellie hit the nail on the head. In order to create her creature, which she aptly named Freddy the Monster, Ellie folded her paper in half and wrote her name on it. She then cut out her name and with her misshapen paper drew her creature on the other side. To me, Ellie's idea and method for creating her creature was exactly the type of creativity that I wanted to see from the kids. On top of her wacky design, Ellie wrote an appropriately wacky story to accompany her creature, talking about Freddy the Monster's love of ice cream and his girlfriend, Nancy. Next up was Sawyer. Out of everybody who participated in this contest, I don't think anybody was as dedicated to perfecting their ideas as Sawyer was. During the limited time that the kids had to work on their drawings, Sawyer drew his creature, wasn't happy with it for whatever reason, and decided to restart. He didn't just do that once, or twice, or even 3 times. Sawyer restarted 6 times and decided that his 7th drawing was the right one. Sawyer created a creature which he titled Jellyfish Robot Gum Dispenser. And as the name entails, it was a gumball machine that was turned into a robot that was controlled by a jellyfish. Sawyer not only had a very interesting idea, but he also seemed to have the clearest vision on what the backstory for his robot was. The third winner was Lillian. During our interview, I asked Lillian how she felt whenever she gets to be creative. Her response was that she gets very excited because she can come up with really cool stuff to make. Let me tell you that Lillian was not kidding around. I could tell that Lillian was definitely one of the most excited kids about this project. And it turned out that she also did come up with a really cool idea. Lillian created a creature which she called Grubs. Grubs is a flower monster that is pretty but also scary. I really liked Lillian's design for Grubs and thought that her story about him was pretty funny. It was during our interview, however, when Lillian's idea took a very interesting twist. Like many of the other kids, Lillian's creature lived in a magical forest. The thing that Lillian said that piqued my interest was that in her magical forest, all of the trees and bushes were made up of stray cats. Yes, you heard me correctly, stray cats. The last winner was Caden. When I presented the idea of creating a creature to the 5th graders, for whatever reason, many of them decided that a creature is synonymous with scary monster. I was a bit shocked to see that there were so many 5th graders that said that the creature they were creating was a big, scary monster that dined on humans. Ultimately, because so many kids designed big, scary monsters, I decided that I should include one as one of the finalists. The scary monster that stood out to me the most was Caden's. The big, toothy mouth and singular cat-like eye on the creature really stood out to me. And after talking to Caden about his horrific creature, I knew that I had made the right decision. His creature was terrifying. Up until this point, all of the focus and the pressure was on the kids. They handled it very impressively though, pumping out incredible works and answering all of my questions with grace and ease. At this point in the project though, it was time that the spotlight was redirected at me. It was time for me to begin working on recreating the kids' creatures. I had all of the kids' drawings and stories and had asked all of the questions that I may have had about their creatures and how they envisioned them. With all of the kids, one of the questions I asked during the interview process was what style they would like me to try and recreate their creatures in. We talked about Ellie's visions for Freddy the Monster and how she would like to see Freddy be reinterpreted. She said that she wanted to see him in a sort of realistic style. I also wanted to try and represent a little bit of Freddy's backstory by placing him in his proper setting, his treehouse. Ellie made a big point about the design of the treehouse, saying that it was pink and yellow and had what she referred to as the freezer wall, where Freddy stored all of his ice cream. For my drawing, I wanted to include as many key elements of Freddy the Monster's story as I could, such as his girlfriend Nancy, his love for ice cream, his quirky personality, and his gooey skin that is covered in confetti because he loves to dance and party. Overall, Freddy the Monster is a weird monster, and my drawing of Freddy the Monster is a weird drawing. Next up was Sawyer's jellyfish robot. When I asked Sawyer what style he wanted to see his creature in, he immediately said a comic book style. I thought that was a really fun idea and was very excited to get started on his drawing. Because Sawyer kept restarting on his design, he didn't end up having enough time to color it in. So in our interview, we talked about what color the robot would be. During the interview, Sawyer also told me about the backstory of the jellyfish robot and how he was a scrapped science fair project that got thrown away in a dumpster in a dark and dirty alleyway, where he now takes up residence. I thought that was an interesting element and decided to try to include it. I also wanted to include the fact that Sawyer's creature shoots gumballs out of his hands at little kids, and that inside the glass dome is Mr. Jellyfish and his best friend, Lil Fishy. Because of the comic book style, I decided it would be interesting to turn the design into a comic book cover, adding text to break up the design. I had a lot of fun with Sawyer's and was pretty happy with how it turned out. Lillian's overall design of Grubs was well developed. She had an interesting overall design. She had figured out colors, she had a clear idea of what his personality was like. She left very little design choices up for interpretation. This made my job of reinterpreting Grubs pretty set in stone, especially since I really liked her original design. Where I was able to put my own twist, however, was in the setting and the style. Lillian told me that it was up to me on what style I should use. I decided to make it pretty cartoonish. As I learned from our interview, the forest, of course, is made up of stray cats. I also knew that Lillian described Grubs as being a, quote, pretty flower, but also that people were scared of Grubs. I decided that maybe the stray cats that inhabited the magic forest were so afraid of Grubs that they would form into clumps of vegetation in order to try and camouflage themselves from Grubs. The combination of Grubs' interesting design and the wacky scenery made this a very strange drawing, which I enjoyed a lot. The final drawing was for Caden's nameless monster. During the interview, I learned that the reason for the monster's lack of name was because all of the people who ever encountered the monster never lived to tell the tale, so nobody even knows it exists. Caden wanted me to come up with a realistic design for his monster. I happily accepted this challenge, excited to see what I could do. Out of all the finalists, Caden was the one who altered his original design the most. Instead of the creature walking around on hind legs, Caden wanted it to crawl around like a centipede. Instead of it being tongueless, Caden wanted the monster to have a long snake-like tongue. Instead of having skin, Caden wanted the monster to have scales on his back and exposed skin on his stomach. Caden also told me that his monster was a combination of red and green, and that it lived in an old shed in the middle of a dense forest. I took all of these notes and made sure to include them in my rendering of the horrifying nameless monster. And with that drawing finally wrapped up, there was only one thing left to do: go present my creations to the kids. At this point, I was obviously pretty nervous. It's one thing to present your own ideas in front of your peers, but it's something entirely different to present somebody else's ideas to them. What if the kids didn't like what I did? What if I didn't do their ideas justice? Months and months of preparation and many, many hours of work from me and the kids were being put on the line. If the kids weren't happy with what I had created, then the whole project would surely be a bust. There was only one way to know for sure. I sat the 4 kids down together for the first time to talk to all of them about what they had created. I went through one by one, looking at their drawings and talking about what I really liked about their works and why I ended up choosing them. I then talked about some of the details that I chose to include in my redraws. Then it was finally time for the big reveal. So I kind of took all those ideas and your designs, and this is what I came up with.
Whoa.
That's cool.
Whoa.
Oh my gosh, that's really cool. That's cool.
Whoa.
Oh, good.
Oh my gosh.
They loved the drawings. I even got Sawyer, who was a bit of a tough nut to crack, to smile a few times. After I presented the 4 drawings to the 4 kids, we talked about what they thought and what they would have liked to see done differently. The general consensus was that the drawings were really, really cool, and that they wouldn't change a single thing. What a relief. And with my final presentation finally over, this project had finally come to an end. As I talked about earlier, this project has been a huge amount of work, but has also been hugely rewarding. I was able to work with a great group of eager 5th graders who were excited to explore their own creativity, as was I. They had so many fantastic ideas and made my job of picking 4 works very difficult. As well as working with others, I was able to do a lot of experimenting. This project truly pushed me out of my comfort zone, as I was really put to the test with creating the illustrations for the kids, designing the overall exhibition, learning on the spot about video recording and interviewing, and then later on with editing, building the exhibit out of scrap material on a shoestring budget, and so much more. Ultimately for me, I have come away from this project with a greater appreciation for creativity. If there is one message that I would like to leave you with today, it is that I encourage you, at the very least, to consider coloring outside the lines. This whole project wouldn't have been possible without all of the help I received from the many, many people behind the scenes. Big thanks to Inman Primary School, specifically Principal Jane Shelley, for allowing me to work with and film her students. Also, huge thanks to Jackie Stevens and Janelle Erickson for letting me take over their classrooms for a few weeks and for helping me make this whole project run smoothly. Also, a big thank you to Dr. Karen Britt, who helped me receive all of the proper approvals from the university for this project. A very big thank you to Anna Musgrave for helping me build the display for my exhibition and providing me with great feedback. I also would like to thank Carter Bruce at CR Graphics for helping me print out everything, my father, Stan Rollins, for his help with building the display, and Curtis Adams, Stacy Rollins, Tiffany Huey, Grace Musgrave, Feishu May, Tom LePan, and Miranda Miles Jackson for all of their help with creative feedback and input. Lastly, I owe a ginormous thank you to all of the kids. You guys all did amazing jobs, and I am so grateful for all of your help. And one last special thank you to Ellie, Sawyer, Lillian, and Caden for putting up with all my questions and for helping me make this project as big as I had truly wanted to be.